Hello everyone, and welcome back to Make Believe. We're playing World and Economica. So, what did we have last time? We had them going shopping, and Hagana doing some crazy haggling, which got her 8 moves total discount, but then she gave that discount to Yoshiharu's half. And even though he wasn't accepting it, to be fair, he's probably the one that least needs it. She was very much insistent on that, to the point that she even cried and threw his money away and left. So here we are making our way back. I wonder how things are gonna be. Like, is the relationship that they were making gonna recover? Or rather, how fast would it recover? And is she gonna recover today, or is it gonna take a couple of days? We'll see. Around the time we returned to the church, it had already gotten dark, and the streets in front of the fronts of the buildings were lined with chairs and tables. For the people clad in worn-out day laborers' clothing who were enjoying a drink, having a light meal, or having a chat with each other, it was a small way to draw some enjoyment out of the evening. For someone like me, who had no shred of interest in the revelry, all I could think was that it was a hindrance to my usual strolls through town. My legs also hurt, so I had finally gotten back with more than a little difficulty. That took you a while. The church door had been bolted shut, so I pressed the intercom and had Lisa let me in. Here we are. After opening the door, Lisa had a bewildered and shocked expression on her face, as if something very strange had happened. Maybe the fact that Hagana probably came in tears might be related to it. Who knows, you know? As I entered the spacious and empty church, the door behind me closed. So, why did you make Hagana cry? Yeah. Lisa sighed as she asked me that question. Just as I had finally gotten back, to be questioned just like that was enough to make me want to start crying too. Like, how I know? Huh? Are you hurt? Of course, gee, this is what happened after she lashed out and kicked me in the shin out of nowhere. Looking at my leg, Lisa said nothing as she touched her own shin. Look, I have no time to be angry about it. I had no idea what happened there, and it wasn't like you could do anything once you started crying. What the hell was that? And on top of that, as soon as I get back, I get pegged as a culprit? Sorry. Don't be upset. As I kept on talking, Lisa tried to alleviate the situation. She placed her hands on my shoulders and apologized sincerely. I tried to shake her off, but Lisa nevertheless held tight and looked at me silently. She was rather good at that stance. Staying mad had started feeling silly, so I sat down on the couch. But even you would be at first concerned about her if a girl started crying though, right, Hal? As irritating as it was, Lisa's reasoning was sound, so all I could do was nod in agreement. Besides, I don't know what's going on either. I had totally thought you two would be coming home all friendly and such. To be fair, they were mostly getting friendly. Huh? Though there were a couple of things from both sides, like him trying to prank her with the clothing, and her insisting on it to the point where kicking him, and my rather displeased response. Lisa was taken aback. Calm down. She then put the palms of her hands together and looked at me. But Hagana didn't thank you? A dubious look crossed my face at Lisa's word, and the crease in my brow looked like it was going to twist itself. Huh? Thanks. There's no way she would have done that. And for what, anyway? Huh. Hey, really? What happened? Lisa also had a dubious look on her face as she asked. I sighed and answered her back. I don't know. Well, how about... Yeah, there we go. I was gonna say, how about starting telling exactly the events, and then you two can figure out together. When we went clothes shopping, Hagana really laid down the hammer, haggling the price down. And when I was going to pay full price for my share, she insisted on giving me back the difference of the haggled price, but I didn't really do anything to deserve it. I said I didn't want the money after her unbelievable haggling. And then she kicked me in the shin. Just saying that made me remember how unreasonable it was. Besides, telling Lisa what I remember was weird enough. I was against going into any more details on the matter. Like the fact that she gave you the half that of all the haggled price was sweet, but her insistence on it was a little too much. Then again, it might have to do with Hagana's lack of social skills and her persistence. Nevertheless, it seemed that just listening to me was giving Lisa a headache as she rubbed her temples. Then she sat in a chair facing me, leaned back, and spoke. I didn't really take into consideration her awkwardness. Huh? Lisa sighed deeply and raised her head. It was I who told her to haggle while going shopping with you. You're the one, huh? Huh? She's really good at that sort of thing, but I see. Of all things that happen... Wait, I don't understand what you mean. Sorry, I'll start from the beginning. So, from getting this, she was the one that told her to haggle and give the haggle price to Yoshiharu? I'm not so sure about that second half, if that was Hagana's choice or if that was Lisa's idea. But we'll see. After saying that, she looked behind her as if she had noticed something. Then she got up, opened the door to the main part of the building, and surveyed the other side. After that, she closed the door quietly, came back, and started talking. Was Hagana on the other side? Well, remember what happened when Toyama came here? Huh? Oh, yeah. Toyama was probably really angry, right? Yeah, that was really something. He has a daughter that is about Hagana's age, but they don't really get along. On the moon, moneylenders are also looked at disdainfully. Probably because of that, they stopped talking to each other. Wow, that's unfortunate. It's true. Despite what he does, he really is a good person. So, I wouldn't have been surprised if you had actually hit her, but you came in, took care of the interest payment, and saved the day, didn't you? And besides, Hagana wanted to hide that from me, and you did end up going along for a plan. So it was supposed to be like a thank you gift? Ah. After that, I then asked Hagana, did you thank him properly? That's certainly what Lisa would say, and I imagined Hagana's reaction. I see, so that's what the thanking is. You probably imagined it exactly right. I guess so. But it was true that you helped her out there, and I told her to properly thank you. Okay, then what about all the haggling? It was kind of to get the cost down for Yoshiharu as a thank you gift. Yeah, she's rather good at it after all. I told her to thank you by haggling over prices, since you probably didn't have any more money left. Yeah, no more money. Oh, yep. That's why, well, you may not like the idea of it, but Hagana was probably in high spirits about it. That hurt, because she was all along doing that for him. Lisa's seemingly apologetic words were, in actuality, swirling around in my mind. It was true that Hagana's way of haggling was strange, despite her harsh personality. If she always haggled that way, someone like Lisa would have warned her by now. No, well, it really was pretty bad. I want to be able to go back to that shop. That bad? Jeez. Lisa put her hands over her forehead, perhaps wondering what else could be done. On top of that, though she was the one haggling, without saying another word, she just handed me the difference. Certainly anyone would refuse it. You're right. You weren't the wrong. If anyone was wrong, it would be me. You didn't do no wrong, woman. Calling her woman? I said that hurriedly, and I could see tired smile on her hand. Thank you, but, woman? Yeah, I was also commenting on that. It wasn't your fault, Lisa. Okay, thank you. Lisa nodded her head and smiled, but I felt like I was getting a headache. Everyone's getting a headache here, huh? I had no idea as to what I should do. In order to thank me, Hagana used those high-handed haggling tactics. On top of that, she thought that I was out of money and pushed the savings all onto me. Part of me wanted to say that if it was just a few moves, then it would have been better just to pay it up. No matter how you look at it, it was an unlucky incident. There was no other way to say it. Like, I guess the best way for there to be a good outcome here would have been if she expressed that was her thanking him for the other day, that she wanted to help him with the prices. But then her awkwardness and her lack of social skills comes into play there. So you can't really blame her for not doing that correctly. It would be strange for me to ask you to apologize to Hagana after all. I'm the victim here after all. I'm pretty bad when it comes to this kind of thing though. Lisa probably gave advice to Hagana out of morality and the kindness of her heart. But those attempts completely backfired. However, I'd feel kind of sorry even if Lisa felt bummed out about it. Well, time will mend things. You don't hate her after all, right? Lisa looked directly at me and said that. Whether I disliked her or not, the only answer was to say no, I suppose. Or should I say, regardless of what I would say, she did talk a bit about her hometown and about the smiles on her student faces, so certainly she understood a thing or two about human emotions. Besides, this time it was an unfortunate turn of events due to Hagana's awkwardness, so there really wasn't a reason for me to feel resentful. Yeah, she didn't do it on purpose. I suppose not. Thank you. You ain't the one to be doing the thanking. Geez, you really are foul-mouthed, aren't you? Lisa laughed sarcastically as she stood up from her chair. But, oh, that was it. Well, why don't we get some food? You're hungry, right? Lisa smiles as she extended a hand towards me. I took her hand and stood up. What I felt in my mind was like the mental equivalent of a bad aftertaste. I can understand that. And I felt disappointed, as it would be pointless to propose the idea of financial engineering to Hagana. Yeah, because after that situation for the relationship, kind of hard to pull the financial engineering card. That night, with the registration deadline looming, I signed up for the investment contest. Even on my own, I should have a chance at it. As I thought about how I didn't necessarily have complete confidence in myself, I soon fell asleep. Maybe some other day you can bring the topic up? The third investment contest, sponsored by the Ratzinger Economics Research Center. The investment contest took place in a virtual world, but the securities market prepared for the event was practically no different from the actual one. There were companies, balance sheets, dividends, and from time to time, unforeseen incidents, mergers, and even bankruptcies. The only links to reality were the exchange rates, interbank interest rates, the various energy markets, and the lunar clock. The contest ran for half a year, with a total of 100,000 participants, and at any one time, roughly 20,000 out of them would be conducting trades at their own pace. Each person starts with 10 million virtual moves and can trade for a total of 40 days. To qualify for the event, there was a system where contestants were selected one by one, either by the Economics Research Center or a supporting investment bank. And thus, many of the contestants invited in the early days of the contest had already finished their trading and had their performance evaluated. The performance results were broadcast and updated in real time. Currently, the top-ranked participant, who went by the handle Mr. Trochet, managed to earn 45 million moles in the 19 days of trading. Was it 40 days? Information from the Economics Research Center mentioned that many big shots investment pros also participated for fun, so it was rumored that Mr. Trochet might have been a top-of-the-league fund manager, or someone from the proprietary trading division of an investment bank. At the breakfast table, while absent-mindedly eating Lisa's ham and eggs, I spilled coffee on my leg just as I had finished gathering that information. I guess you aren't willing to be careful. Did you get scalded? I took the napkin and wiped myself minimally, and simply stared at the computer without wasting time putting the napkin back. How? Lisa's loud voice brought me back to reality. Did you get scalded? She laughed cheerfully as she looked at me. It was enough to get my heart pounding, as I had my hand on my chest when I realized that the napkin was still in my hands before I gave it back to Lisa. So, did you get scalded? For the third time. Please answer. No, I'm fine. No matter what you're doing, you can wait till after you finish eating. The clanking sound of tableware brought me once again back to reality from the screen of my computer. Knowing the waste of time it would have been to argue, I stuffed my face with what was left, then replied, Jeez. I could see her say that in disgust from the corner of my eye as I put down the tableware. The investment contest ran on lunar time and was open only when the lunar stock exchange was open. In other words, were I to have put all my energy into this contest, I would no longer have time to do any actual trading. However, I only had 70,000 moles, compared to the 200,000 moles that would go to the winner, and they even said that the top-ranked contestants would be headhunted by Schrödinger Street. If that were the case, then instead of losing money slowly, like I've been doing recently, trading virtual money and diving straight to the more rewarding contest was the right thing to do. Basically a high risk, high reward. Why am I having such trouble with words? Besides, looking around on the web, it seemed that the price fluctuation and behavior of stocks traded within the contest, although fictional, supposedly were no different from the stocks of actual companies. Well, I wasn't sure if this was the case. Some kind person in their spare time did make and upload a table correlating the virtual stocks with the real ones. Look at the corresponding stock movement on a graph did make them look very similar. For now, I had downloaded the table and saved it. And without even taking my eyes off the screen, as my hand searched for my coffee cup, I ended up knocking it with the backside of my hand. Again? Will you stop that? While Lisa was being annoyed, I picked up the coffee cup and ducked my head down as I sipped it. Jeez. That's right. Hagana. I would have returned my focus to the computer as usual, but somehow the mention of Hagana at the end of her sentence had caught me off guard. Despite my head being filled with all things concerning the investment contest, the events from yesterday came to mind again. Today, I need your help with a lecture at the university, so I won't be around. You better be sure to eat lunch, okay? Hearing no response, I took a quick sidelong glance. I could see Hagana, for her usual sour expression, turn away and nibble at her bread. I'm waiting for an answer. Lisa smiled. Hagana had stopped munching on her bread and turned hesitantly towards Lisa. It appeared that whether there was a need to eat lunch or not was a point of contention with Lisa. But then again, when I would be immersed in trades, I would not have any time to eat lunch. Hagana was immersed within the understanding of a mathematical proof in her own way, so I could understand the reason to not be bothered. However, whether Lisa was fine with that or not was an entirely different problem. I will make lunch for you. You make sure you eat it, okay? Your answer? Hagana said nothing once more, but it seemed that Lisa's smile persevered as Hagana gave in and finally said something. Why, only me? Why only me? Though she didn't look at me, it was clear that she was implying, yeah, there was no one else here. Naturally, Lisa understood immediately. Just because Hao ends up not eating doesn't mean you get to do the same. After bargaining so forcefully at the clothing shop, Hagana acted like a child in front of Lisa. Her weak point, as I thought about that, I was drifting around the sea of the net, absent-mindedly. But suddenly, I realized that Lisa had turned towards me. Well, Hal, you're going to remember to eat, right? Even though she hadn't bothered me while I was trading up until now, she somehow decided to choose today to do so. I looked at Lisa and confronted her smile. It was a smile in poor taste. Is this going to cost me extra? Flabbergasted, she sighed in response to my desperate reply. Of course not. It's important for your growth to eat every day. If you don't, you won't get any taller. Whatever. I wasn't that short for my age, but if I had to be honest, I'd say I was a bit on the smaller side. Just a little bit. Not too much. I groaned in response. Then Lisa turned towards Hagana again and appeared to whisper something to her ear. When she did that, Hagana appeared shocked and started to cower as if one of her secrets had been guessed. Then she looked downcast and bit down on her lip. Are you fine with that? Hagana looked conflicted when Lisa asked her that question, but soon enough she appeared to give in as she nodded her head. Is this gonna be another one of Lisa's schemes? What the heck did she say anyway? I was perplexed until Hagana looked up slightly. It was clear what she was looking at, so I was able to hit upon a theory. Or, should I say, after looking awkwardly at Lisa's assets, she looked at her own chest. What? It appeared that she was rather concerned about her small size. So, talk about her being small on that category, I see. Well, it was true that Lisa's chest was rather plentiful, and I suddenly realized that Lisa was looking at me as I had decided to take a gander myself. Well, what? I did nothing. You can't prove anything. What? You're all shaken up. Lisa tilted her head slightly as she said that. Well, with that said, the two of you better make sure you eat lunch. However, I also won't be happy if the both of you hide in rooms and eat. You two better eat here, together. Understand? At Lisa's words, I now understood why today of all days she was so insistent about making sure we ate lunch. It would be just the two of you. Though it wasn't all that unrealistic, shake hands and make peace, this was a rather forceful manner of insistence. Lisa, the embodiment of what both amazed and bothered me, then had the nerve to wink at me. Interesting way to put it, she's the embodiment of everything of what amazes you and bothers you. It was true that when I came into the living room, Hagana did not even once look at me directly. It didn't particularly bother me either way, but that wasn't because of any childish stubbornness either. I looked back at Lisa and just shrugged my shoulders. Alright, so that's how it would be. Lisa clapped her hands, clap her hands, and cheerfully proceeded to start cleaning things up. I didn't know why she was so enthusiastic about it, but as I focused on my computer screen, I stole a glance at Hagana. As usual, Hagana had a sour look on her face and continued to chew on her bread, as if I didn't exist. There weren't any additional restrictions in the rules for the investment contest. In addition to normal trading, buying on margins and short selling were also allowed. There was no daily restriction on the number of transactions, only a 0.1% transaction fee on the value of the stocks traded. The only special rule was that the participant only had 40 days of trading once they started. On top of that, after those 40 days were up, they wouldn't just close up all the positions and calculate the totals. It was simply that no more transactions could take place after that point. So if you held on to stocks, their values would continue to change. I wonder if this was done out of concern for people who made more long-term trades as opposed to people like me who went for many short-term trades in a single day. I guess depending on how fast you do and how many short trades you do, they can actually be worth it over the long-term trades. Long-term trades are trickier because things can fluctuate very heavily to either side. And then, at the conclusion of the contest, the profit and loss would be calculated from the value of the stocks. In other words, if you were to carelessly hold on to random stocks, there wouldn't be a little that could be done or they'd slump in value afterwards. But also, they could increase exponentially and your result would increase also exponentially. On the other hand, even if after 40 days, one was not able to reach the top in terms of profits, there was always the hope that any retained stock would be promising and bear fruit, thus rising value afterwards. From the information grabbed from the official website when it opened to the public, it was clear that, much like the actual stock exchange, the virtual one had its share of good days and bad days for trading. There were days that had overall downward trends, as well as those with overall upward trends. Observing how things were progressing at the start of the contest, it seemed like an easy moving bull market. No idea what that means. Looking on the net, most investors would time their start with when the markets were doing well overall, then go full throttle trading for 40 days. Afterwards, they placed all their bets on the few stocks that looked like they would go up and pray that they did. However, my situation was a bit different. When I received an invitation, there were only 44 days left in the contest. Therefore, he didn't have much room to wait. I was probably one of the last to be invited, I'd imagine. I could see how it could have been a disadvantage, but it was actually an advantage since I could take in everything before making a move. True, you could have seen everything that everyone done up to then, and it wouldn't be much of a risk leaving stocks to the end, since there would be only 4 days that you couldn't move around. Meanwhile, people that had like half a year with a stock standing had no idea how that stock would lead in the end. Furthermore, unlike the real market, it was hard to get a feel for the virtual markets in the early days of the contest, because it was just the beginning of it, so I guess. In their spare time, a bunch of kind contestants collected and published data about various aspects of the contest. Furthermore, there were contestants who chat among themselves. From their conversation, it appeared that there were many long-term investors in the early days of the contest, and the more short-terms were called to the contest in the later half, which makes sense that Yoshiharu is in the end. I was more of an extreme version of the latter, which may have been why I got called up at the last minute. Besides, for the most part, I didn't mind the feel of the market. When the whole market felt like it was down, I would look for stocks that had over-depreciated and pick them up at a discount. Then, either on that day or the next day, when everyone had calmed down, I would sell. If the market was an upward trend, I just ride the wave. There were many methods when it came to trading, but I traded using the simplest of strategies. I had been doing ridiculously well just by employing that strategy, so this time around, I just had to keep going as I had been. Although I looked confident in my plans, I didn't feel like starting my trades right away. It doesn't look like it will work. I mumbled that to myself in front of my computer. Were I to begin trading, then my 40-day period would start, No ifs, ands, or buts. I didn't have time to hesitate, but I really was hesitant and couldn't bring myself to press the button to start trading. If this contest were exactly the same as actual market, then proceeding as normal would have probably produced the same results. I heard the contest was not conducted annually, but rather on an irregular schedule. I also heard that this contest was part of an experiment to see if the real market could be reproduced. Since the beginning of time, there has yet to be someone who could unlock the secrets to the market. Even the greatest investor out there of infallible logic and reasoning, even Mr. Infallible himself, could still lose big. If this experiment were to succeed, it would be the equivalent of unlocking the secrets to alchemy. Wow, what a comparison. But also, I wanted to stop here and talk about something that I remember back in 6th grade. We had a class project thing, which was kind of like this. A fake stock, because there were a bunch of stock markets, and each of us had a certain value. We could choose 3 companies and have stock, like a couple of stocks from each one, would have fake stocks from each one, and we would keep track of them throughout the project period. And then we'll see how did we went, if we made some good choices, some bad choices. And this kind of reminded me of that, of course, on a bigger scale. Of course, investment banks and funds were a bit more realistic than that, and it seemed that they basically used this as a means to fish for talent. Even to an onlooker like me, it didn't look like the organizers were a monolithic entity. It appeared that the lunar government also had its hands in this. So perhaps there was some reason known only to grown-ups that the contest was held irregularly. In other words, it wasn't clear whether or not there would be another time. If that were the case, then there wouldn't be another chance to win the top prize and get scouted for Schrödinger Street. Thinking about that, I couldn't move carelessly. Failure was not an option. That was why I was monitoring the actual market and the virtual market at the same time. But what should I do at this late hour? I didn't feel like using the computer while sitting properly at the desk, so I placed it on the floor and sat cross-legged in front of it. Oh, we're looking at the ceiling. That's a different shot I did not expect. I mumbled to myself as I sat cross-legged and then placed my hands behind my head before looking up and falling backwards. If I had a different method. While I looked at the ceiling, I went over what I knew about the various methods of trading. Maybe the financial engineering with Hagana's help is gonna be the savior. There were 3 main techniques when it came to trading stocks. Given that owning stocks was basically owning a piece of a corporation, one technique focused on the basic principle that sound corporations would rise in value while bad ones would drop. Looking over the minute financial details of a corporation's performance and examining the products they manufactured before investing was a fundamental way of trading. The second technique was to ignore such fundamentals and focus solely on the price fluctuation of a stock to gain maximum profits. So this is the simplest method. Just ignore the details and just focus on the numbers. This was a trading method that relied heavily on plotted graphs of stock prices changed on charts, utilizing that movement to make a trade. Okay, never mind. So instead of focusing on researching on the company itself, you research on the stock's fluctuation. Analyzing the previous charts of countless companies, one would predict whether a stock would likely rise or fall given the curves. This was called the technical analysis. The third technique was based on the assumption that stock movements were essentially random and it was impossible to predict people's action. There was apparently some statistical results stating that there wasn't much difference in performance between people sweating it out looking up company performance, staying up all night to analyze charts and choose stocks to trade, and monkeys throwing darts randomly. which that's why it makes investment such a hard to do task. Because you can, no matter how much work you do, you can never fully predict what's going to happen. They assert that the price fluctuation of stocks are random, and thus they were called random walkers. In my case, I focused on the good merits of all three techniques. I took news about a particular business into consideration and made predictions based on the stock price's fluctuation, but even then it was hard to say what would happen to the stock price, so in the end I would rely on intuition before trading. At first, it was amazingly efficient, and even I wondered if I wasn't some kind of genius. Certainly, there had been times where, despite my confidence, I had purchased stocks that had dropped in value, and thinking it was a bad situation, had relinquished them only to watch them skyrocket in value afterwards. Oh, I can imagine that. I can imagine that. Because if you leave the stock, you might never go up again. It just keep going down. Overall, I had done well. Even though I had faith in my trading methodology. Oh my god. I'm having a hard time with this word. Methodology? Sure, let's go with that. Losses started cropping up soon enough, and my mind began to fill with doubt. Was what I was doing really the right way? Trying to take the good points of all the three methods was meaninglessly. It was really more about which one method of the three was a better choice. What bothered me and made me hesitant, in other words, was this. Thus, when I heard about Hagana's mathematical skills, I realized that there was the possibility of a fourth method of training. Using mathematics to make prediction of the future was commonplace in physics. Yeah, very common physics. Like the most basic of physics class have you doing that. For example, if you were to visit the service page of the orbital elevator, there was a prediction as to when and where the orbital elevator would collide with the garbage floating around Earth. The time delay would have on service and the danger levels were then displayed. Estimates by the space station took into account pieces of garbage larger than the tip of your thumb. If there was the possibility of anything large colliding with it, it would be destroyed with a laser or caused to fall back to Earth. Up until now, there had not once been a major accident or error. It could be possible to perfectly predict the movement of tens of thousands of pieces of garbage, no larger than the size of your thumb, as it ordered the Earth at several kilometers a second. There would be no reason that such precise calculations could not also be used to predict price fluctuations of stocks. Those who believe in that theory were called quants, and there was apparently a smattering of them who held PhDs from Lunar University. How about 2 kids? Are you guys even in high school? I don't remember. If Hagana possessed that talent and was able to mimic the trading method of quants, as I thought about that, I realized that it was practically a pipe dream. Even Hagana were able to understand all of that. It was an entirely different thing for her to agree to help me. I don't know. I feel like if you actually be nice about it, if she might consider it. At this point, I had just finished spending the morning combing websites for tricks on how to do well in the virtual markets. The clock had just about hit noon when I remembered Lisa's orders. You know what? We're gonna stop here and let them have their lunch together. Next episode. So let's save and leave. I don't know how long that scene's gonna be, but hopefully it wouldn't be just a little fast scene. But I guess we'll find out next week. And with that being said, see you next time. Bye.